So,
report.
yeah, after all the nice and elaborate talks, in my talk, I would just highlight the differences in this machine from the previous machines and just go to some clinical examples and just tell you what protocol I follow and why. So, when I started using imaging in glaucoma, this was 10 years ago, we had to find out what machine suits me. So, I had done some basic research, and with the literature that was available, with certain parameters, I decided to go in with the Spectralis. There were certain important considerations that you have to take when you start using imaging technology, and that we can cover right now, but these are the certain things that you need to see. So, like the interoperator reproducibility and also the resolution. So now coming to imaging in glaucoma, it's been an Achilles heel. It's never been easy, and people are still skeptical to use imaging as a tool for progression. There are certain reasons for that. So imaging in glaucoma is requiring certain major quality checks. You need to see the image scores. You need to see the refraction status to compare it to the database. You need BMO verification. You need segmentation and contour checks, and you need to check out for major changes like PVD which occur with time. Now this machine does give us three scan choices: 3.5, the 4.1, and the 4.7, which is exclusive to this machine, so that you can escape the area of peripapillary atrophy as well as a myopic conus, as well as myelinated nerve fibers at the disc, and get still good scans in each and every patient. There are 48 BMO identification points, which I think is very, very important, because these BMO points will ultimately decide how good your disc scan and the MRW output is. So it's like garbage in, garbage out. If your data input is not good, the analysis is not good either. So what you have to understand is that the BMO identification is the critical point of any machine, and here in this machine you can actually identify and correct the BMO contour lines, which I think is not possible in most of the machines. So this is very, very important, because the moment this goes wrong, all the entire analysis will go wrong. A little influence of cataract and pupil, but I don't follow this dictum from the companies, because I believe in maintaining a standard imaging quality all throughout, and the influence of cataract definitely will change the machine RNFL thickness. So I use standard imaging conditions like a dilated pupil in most of my cases unless contraindicated, and see for lens opacities in great detail. So use of imaging in glaucoma decision making is very demanding process. So normative databases, just for the knowledge, you have European, USA, and Japanese ethnic descent, 18 to 90 years of age. The Indian is still awaited, but a significant number which is comparable to most machines. Now, which is the best map for glaucoma interpretation? Now, you get many maps in many machines, and you have to choose the ones which give you the most information. Remember, you're not in front of the machine most of the time. So you should be sure that all the quality checks are there in the maps that you interpret, so that you do not miss anything and don't interpret maps which are wrong. So you need to have a segmentation map, you need to have an image score, you need to have the anatomy of the entire neuron. So never do RNFL in isolation or a ganglion cell in isolation. You have to see both together. So you have choices like OU, the MRW asymmetry, the summary, the Hood report. All these things are there. I would just tell you what I do and what is my choice with the reasons. So remember, this is the ganglion cell body, the tail, and the axon terminals. They are part of one neuron. So you can't see in isolation. So this is like seeing the elephant only with the ear and the tail and not the head, if you don't see the ganglion cell layer at the time when you examine the RNFL or the rim. So always remember, see the entire neuron. My choice of charts in the Spectralis is the OU report and the glaucoma overview. The reason is simple. In the OU report, I see the SLO image, which is again trademark of the Spectralis, because you do not have an SLO in most of the machines. And there you can see exactly the place where the BMO center is located. You can see the size of the Brooks membrane opening, which has been documented, and this FODI, or the fovea disc axis, which is the trademark for cyclotorsion adjustment in the Spectralis, which is very, very important. Now, what I do next is basically align. You have another option to see these reports here. You have the MRW RNFL asymmetry single analysis, where you have the macular thickness map asymmetry, which can detect early changes in glaucoma. So when you have these three maps, you have the disc, you have the RNFL, and you have the macula all in one. Exactly as I told you, the entire neuron in one picture. You do not have any segmentation picture here, so I prefer to have another OU map which gives me the RNFL segmentation, the quality checks, and the status of the posterior vitreous, which again is not seen in many machines. So structure correlation is very important. You have to know the entire anatomy of the neuron. Now see the important features that I usually look at. I look at the disc diameter, the scanning circle diameter, the posterior vitreous. Now this is very clear here, the posterior vitreous attachments. In case there is a PVD, this will alter, the RNFL contour will alter. So I have my answer. Here I have the quality checks in place. A Q score of more than 15 is acceptable, but I use more than 20, 25 as the standard. The more the score, the better your imaging technology, imaging methodology. Then you go to the OU map. On the OU map on the left side, here you can see the Garvey-Hitch sectors. These are for the RNFL. These Garvey-Hitch sectors have a parenthesis here, which indicate the similarity of the patient's reading in that particular sector as compared to that of the normative database, which is adjusted to age as well as the BMO size. So this gets very, very, very specific to the database and very specific to that individual patient. So this this becomes as good as it gets. Even here you have something called as the CC, or the compensation for the refraction. We have to make sure that to apply your data to the normative database, this CC is in place. So there are so many quality checks that you need to put in before you go in to interpret an image. So the important points that you need to see are interhemispheric asymmetry, inter-eye structural correlation, inter-eye asymmetry, and clinical correlation. So these are the points that I usually see. So prototype cases in different glaucomas, I'll just highlight in a jiffy. You see this early disease here. If you can see, you on clinical examination, there was a RNFL defect. So here you can see there is a depression in the MRW. There is a depression which is local, which is not picked up in the sectoral Garvey-Heath maps. But you know that there is a definite notching here. And here you can see that the pi of the ganglion cell complex that is eaten away. So this is very, very clear here that you've got a localized defect, which you wouldn't have picked up in case you would have just seen the interpretation of the scans and not seen it very closely clinically. So here you can have inter-eye asymmetry also is very, very significant. Compare both the eyes and you can see the donut intact here and the donut eaten away on this side. Now go to the pre-perimetric glaucoma. This is one case seen in 2013 and 15. Clinically appears to be completely okay. But if you see the average RNFL thickness, it has changed from 94 to 79, and which is very, very, very significant. And this is before the perimetric defect took place. The perimetry was absolutely normal. So this is a case of pre-perimetric glaucoma. Even the 10-2 test in this patient was normal. Now see an established case of open angle glaucoma. Here you have the T-SNIT of the RNFL showing a sectoral decrease in the superior and inferior pole in the right eye and both poles in the left eye. You can see a classical correlation with the nasal step here, biaccurate scotoma here, whereas the ganglion cell is eaten on one side, eaten on the other side, but the opposite side is absolutely normal. This is what I want to tell you, that this ganglion cell or the RNFL alone will not give you the total picture. Both when considered together will give you the total picture. Here you can see RNFL sector superior and inferior both are thinned corresponding to the scotoma. The ganglion cell is corresponding only to one part of the scotoma. So all these things you have to keep in mind. Now normal tension glaucoma, you know that these maps have scotomas near fixation. Beautifully demonstrated here. You can see localized thinning of the RNFL in both eyes here inferiorly, corresponding to the notching of the RNFL in the T-SNIT curve, corresponding to the scotomas near the center. And you can see that almost half of the ganglion cell layer is wiped out. So it's very, very classical correlation. You see the entire ganglion cell throughout its length and picture becomes very, very clear. Angle closure disease, picture is slightly different. Now, if you see both discs, a curve disc ratio appears quite okay. There is a mild pallor in the right hand side. Now, this is obviously a serous map, but it appears similar in the spectralis, where you see that there is a diffuse ganglion cell loss as compared to the loss in the RNFL. So this is very, very classical of ischemic damage. Now you see this patient who's a disc suspect. If you see is a 15-year-old female, you have all the Garvey sectors which are abnormal, but this does not look a classical glaucoma. If you see this case very clearly, curve disc ratio is very normal, but what you see is the ganglion cell maps show great amount of thinning in the ganglion cell layer, which is not classical of glaucoma, that the RNFL and the ganglion cell being so abnormal, and there being no progression over time without any anti-glaucoma treatment. So this patient turned out to be a case of hereditary optic neuropathy. So these are the variations that you need to know, which resemble glaucoma, but may not essentially be glaucoma in the first place. Now, certain neurological cases that you need to know here. You can see these Garvey sectors here. These are like a bow tie appearance in the left eye and superior and inferior sector in the right eye. Now, this is a very, very classical pattern. If you've seen this very closely, this is of a optic tract lesion. This was a case of DeVeek's disease, which was being treated as glaucoma elsewhere. And you can see this. This is a bitemporal or rather homonymous defect of the macular ganglion cell layer. So this is, never forget to see all parts of the neuron. That is the take home message. Spectralis progression also you can make out very easily. You can see progression as clinically as widening of defect or appearance of new defect. You can see changes in average thickness, and you can see changes in the decibel value. Rate of thinning in normal people is 0.15 to 0.56. For spectralis, you can pick up as small as 2 micron changes due to its horizontal and axial resolution. Now, macular ganglion cell maps, for detection of early changes, you can get event analysis maps like this. With changing time, you can get 2 time frames and the difference map below. So this can be similar to what you call as an event analysis on the CRS. You can get a timeline of progression by plotting the different parameters like the average ganglion cell layer thickness over time. Whenever there is a potential outlier, it has been definitely pointed out, and you can go back to the image and see the quality scores. As far as the sectoral maps are concerned, you can delineate each sector also over a period of time. And as you can make out here, the temporal superior sector is progressively thinning over time, and the map can be easily denoted the stability and the progression on the sectoral progression maps. So this is very, very important, but always remember that these maps are less important than the kind of image that you obtain in the first place. So make sure that every image you obtain follows the standard criteria that I outlined in the first slide. Now, a few comments about tilted disc. Tilted disc and myopia are the things which are always a Pandora's box in imaging. And here you can see clearly, irrespective of myopia and tilted disc, scans are very easily obtained, and over a period of time, the scans are stable. So the disc suspect, which looks almost like a glaucoma, can be exonerated from the treatment and unnecessary follow-ups that might be accrued due to an abnormal imaging or a abnormal clinical examination. So the take-home message is spectralis can be robust in preperimetric disease, glaucoma progression, and neurological problems. It offers special advantages in being fast and reproducible. You can have changeable contour lines, which you cannot do in most of the machines, and visualization of a posterior vitreous, which is very, very robust when you want to make out certain unexplained changes in glaucoma follow-ups. So thank you for your patient hearing. I'm open to questions if any.